said throughout this conflict. The United States fully supports Israel's right to defend itself against indiscriminate rocket attacks from Hamas and other Gaza-based terrorist groups that have taken the lives of innocent civilians in Israel. The Prime Minister also shared with me his appreciation for the Iron Dome system, which our nations developed together and which has saved lives of countless Israeli citizens, both Arab and Jew. I assured him of my full support to replenish Israel's Iron Dome system to ensure its defenses and security in the future. Over the last 11 days, I've spoken with the Prime Minister 6 times. I've also spoken with President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority more than once, and part of our intense diplomatic engagement.
Joe Biden has made a point of acknowledging Israel's right to self-defence while also respecting the right of Palestinian people to live in peace and security. He's always done that. He did that again this evening by stressing the need for supply lines to be reopened into Gaza in particular. It's a difficult environment and one where Joe Biden was stressing the need, along with Egypt, to make sure that that coordinated assistance project gets underway soon and that itself is not subject to any danger. So that becomes a priority.
And we'll have a special program today on the ABC News channel about the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, hosted by Stan Grant. That'll air at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on the ABC News channel and any time later on iView. And just before we go on, mentioning once again that the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, is holding a media conference. He's due to start taking questions pretty soon, and we'll cross there live to Tasmania just as soon as that starts happening. Medical experts are urging Australians over the age of 50 to roll up their sleeves and get the AstraZeneca vaccine rather than wait for alternatives. It comes as senior ministers concede reporting cases of adverse reactions from the vaccine are likely fuelling uncertainty about its safety. Political reporter Matthew Doran has more from Canberra.
They're worried that the good work that Australia has done in trying to control coronavirus could be put at risk if this defence of vaccination isn't put in place across the country as quickly as possible, suggesting that there is almost a sense of complacency creeping into some parts of the Australian community. You only have to look at the social restrictions that are currently in place to know that they are minimal compared to other countries around the world. In the same sense as that, the number of coronavirus infections that we're recording in Australia is just a tiny fraction of what other countries are dealing with. Take India, for example, which is recording thousands and thousands of cases and more devastatingly deaths every single day from coronavirus. We're not seeing that situation here in Australia, but health authorities and experts are worried that if there was to be an outbreak in one part of Australia and not enough people are vaccinated quickly enough, then that could spread further throughout the community. Now, part of this decision by some Australians over the age of 50 is because of that ongoing debate about the AstraZeneca vaccine, that health advice that has linked the vaccine to a small number of rare blood clotting cases across the country and indeed around the world. The overwhelming advice from health authorities is that the AstraZeneca vaccine...
OK, we'll just leave that there because the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has begun taking questions in Tasmania.
Bridget, for the great job she has done, working with the Tasmanian State Government and our government to ensure that right here, where it is a real labour force challenge, if you can't get the fruit off the plant, well, you can't turn the profit. And so we've had a very successful program here, being done safely, supporting the needs of business, but also supporting the needs of local communities, because when this property is thriving, then everything around it thrives. And so there is a positive benefit, and this is using the Pacific Labour Scheme, and so that's also supporting families back in Timor-Leste, back over in Tonga, that greatly benefit from these types of programs. Now, they're small scale, but they're very important to these projects, they're very important to those families, and they're very important to the local economy. So this has demonstrated that we have been able, through COVID, through good partnerships, working closely together, doing it safely, meeting those needs.
Prime Minister, Victoria delivered its budget yesterday. Like your budget, it announced plans for extra spending on social services. Unlike your budget, though, it did outline revenue measures to pay for it, whereas you announced plans to go further into debt to pay for just the social services component. isn't Victoria's approach more fiscally prudent? And doesn't it show more discipline for them to find the funds to pay for these rather than going into debt?
No, it doesn't. This is the worst time that you could increase taxes on the Australian economy. This is self-defeating. To put up taxes on Australian businesses looking to employ people as we come out of a COVID pandemic and recession is irresponsible. It slows growth, it defeats the purpose. If you put up taxes when an economy and businesses are looking to get up on their feet, it just knocks them down again. You knock businesses down, they don't employ people, more people go onto welfare, more people aren't paying taxes. It's self-defeating. It's self-defeating. And so that's why we say it is not the responsible thing to do. It is not the economically responsible thing to do to put a big tax handbrake on job creation as you're recovering from a pandemic. Our budget is for the times. Our budget is to address the serious economic challenges the country faces. Labor are just putting up taxes again because that's what Labor does. They are addicted to higher taxes, and what you've seen in Victoria, you'll see from Anthony Albanese and the Labor Party. We saw it at the last election. Labor are addicted to higher taxes. The answer to every question from Labor is higher taxes. That's not our answer. Our answer is to back Australians in, grow the economy. A strong economy is what pays for social services, not higher taxes.
Isn't it irresponsible to go further into debt? And I'm not talking about stimulatory measures for COVID. I'm talking funding $17 billion for aged care, $30 billion for social services without anything to offset it.
No, a strong economy offsets it, Greg. A strong economy offsets it. You cannot pay for the National Disability Insurance Scheme with high unemployment. You cannot pay for the National Disability Insurance Scheme if you're running your economy into the ground. It has always been our view that the way you pay and get for and guarantee the essential services that Australians rely on is by ensuring that your economy is strong, that people are investing, that people are getting into jobs. Otherwise, you're just chasing your tail down a tunnel, and it's a downward spiral. Higher taxes cuts jobs. Higher taxes cuts growth. Higher taxes impedes our ability to pay for and guarantee the essential services Australians rely on. That's why you did not find higher taxes in the Treasurer's budget. You found it in a Labor budget, and you'd see it in a Labor budget under a Labor government.
Prime Minister, just on the mRNA vaccine facility production development, is it a matter of building this facility from the ground up, and when will that first locally produced dose be available?
Well, a couple of points. The first one is this will be a partnership. We've called for those proposals to come forward and to find out exactly what is needed from those proponents to see these facilities and capabilities being established here in Australia. And so that will be done as a partnership between industry and government. The purpose of this is not just to address the challenges that we have with COVID-19, because the COVID-19 pandemic is raging and it will continue to rage. Not just now, but it could be for years to come. This is not to address any immediate vaccination issues. It is to create a capability, not just for producing vaccines to deal with COVID, but what we've seen with the mRNA vaccines is they are the new technology. They are the new way of doing vaccines around the world. Now, 18 months ago, apart from some trial treatments in HIV, this was largely science fiction. And so this is a very new science. And so we're moving quickly to establish that, not just for now, but for the long term and for many other vaccines that will be done through mRNA, not just COVID. So this is a long-term plan with short and medium-term benefits.
Is it correct that the Queensland Government's Wellcamp quarantine proposal was only 15 pages long, with lots of pictures and contained no details about cost or operational info?
That is true.
What specific information do you need from them to take this to the next step?
They know full well what that is because we've asked them for it on numerous occasions.
Can you tell us though?
No, they know what it is, and I'll leave it with them.
Has the
Premier
Premier
is
been lying
having
to you?
a press conference pretty much at the same time as this. Why isn't he here?
Sorry?
The Premier, Peter Gutwein, is having a
Yeah, I'll be catching up with him later today. We were texting each other this morning.
Just on vaccines, what message does it send that the Queensland Premier has not yet been vaccinated and that Jeanette Young is getting the Pfizer vaccine instead of the AstraZeneca vaccine? Is there bad messaging there? Is it vaccine hesitancy? Is it fueling that? Are you concerned?
I'm encouraging all Australians, particularly those aged over 70, to go and get their vaccination. This week, we are likely to see our first 500,000 week on vaccinations. 500,000. We may well see 100,000 in a day today. By early next week, we will have vaccinated more than half the over 70s population in Australia. And very soon we will have fully completed the vaccination of all those in residential aged care facilities. Now, this is important because these are our most vulnerable populations. As we saw in the Victorian second wave, they are the Australians who are most at risk. So I'm encouraging, if you're over 70 and you've had your vaccine, which is about almost half right now, thank you. Thank you for doing that. And I want to thank families for supporting. I said my mum's had it, my mother-in-law's had it, and they're doing great. And I would encourage families to have that discussion with their elderly parents or those that they know and encourage them to go and get that vaccination booked in. There's plenty of opportunities to do that. Those who are getting 50 in GP clinics are now getting 150, 100 doses are now turned to 200. And that's why we're seeing the ramp up of this program. It's going from strength to strength every week. And I particularly, commend the Tasmanian government here for their job they're doing, partnering with us on rolling out that vaccine. Thank all the GPs for the great job they're doing. So it's going from strength to strength every week. So my message is very clear, and that is I would encourage all those who are over 50 to go and get the jab, and particularly if you're over 70, which is our strong focus, I would very much encourage you to do it.
What message, though, does it send that the Chief Health Officer in Queensland can get either AstraZeneca or Pfizer and she's choosing Pfizer?
Well, she's in the phase 1B, I think, which...
but she could pick either.
Well, I'll leave those decisions to her.
But I'm asking what message you think it sends?
Well, I'm not making any comment on it.
Prime Minister, economist Chris Richardson predicts that in order to fund the extra spending on essential services, only 40 billion of cuts once the economy is doing a bit better. Do you accept that there will need to be cuts in the post-COVID era, or is your strategy that a stronger economy will be able to pay for these?
Well, as both a Treasurer and as a Prime Minister who worked together with this Treasurer, we went into the pandemic with a balanced budget. And we achieved that by growing the Australian economy. We've done it. See, I think Australians understand that when it comes to a choice between the Labor Party and the Liberals and the Nationals have the form in being able to grow economies that produce stronger budgets. The way you have a stronger budget is you have a stronger economy. That's always been our plan, and that plan has proved successful in the past, and that's what our recovery plan for Australia set out in this year's budget is all about. It's about growing the economy, because it's pretty simple maths. Someone who is in a job is paying tax. Someone who is not in a job is getting paid by the taxpayer. And that has been the principal driver as we took the budget back into balance before the pandemic hit and enabled us. I'm glad we did that hard work. And I'm glad Australians did that hard work by growing our economy, because it meant we could respond in a way like no government in Australia has ever had to before. And that has seen Australia come through. Not because of government. I want to be very clear about this. This is not a government-led recovery. Government is not the answer here. It's businesses like this one. Family businesses like this one. It's Australians pulling through. We just backed them in. Sure, we backed them in with record fiscal support like you've never seen before. And I've got to say the Tasmanian government here did a great job in backing them in. Much smaller government, but they did their share of heavy lifting down here. And I commend Peter Gutman and the whole team. So I'm not surprised that he's been returned as Premier, because he's got his plan to see Tasmania continue to recover. We've got our plan, a Liberal national plan, to continue to see the Australian economy recover. And I think Australians have seen the demonstration of our economic credentials to achieve that in the past, and that's why we'll be going forward with that plan in the future.
You were against our Premier's hard border closure at the start of the pandemic. Do you now concede that it was probably the right thing to do?
Well, I respected his decisions. He's a Premier of his state, as I respected all the Premier's decisions, and I continue to respect all the Premier's decisions. And I think right across the country, as the Chair of the National Cabinet, we've been able to work effectively together over these many months, over a year now. But it was the principal decision that I think first set Australia up here was closing the international borders. And they remain closed, and they'll remain closed for as long as that is the safe thing for Australia to do.
Have you been caught up on the saga surrounding the Liberal elected person, Adam Brooks, and the saga surrounding charges and allegations that he was essentially lying to women about his personality?
Well, he's rightly resigned.
In Tasmania, and you're about to see the unemployment rate rise. What is being done by your government to address that?
Lower taxes, instant asset write-off, ensuring the businesses can invest, more funding for training. I mean, the Job Trainer program, for example. Job Trainer program was born in the middle of the pandemic, and it came from an urgent need where I was concerned and the Treasurer was concerned that we would be having thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of school leavers coming out of last year and facing a potentially very weak labour market and not with opportunities. So we agreed in a matter of a fortnight, the Premiers and I, with the great support of the Treasurers, to put in place a $1 billion program that created over 300,000 training places. We also put in 30,000 additional university places as well to support that program. Now, in this budget, we're doubling down on Job Trainer. It's been such a success, just like our apprenticeship program, which saw 100,000 apprentices additional boosted in a space of 5 months. We thought it'd take us 12. We got it done in 5, so we've extended the program. So whether it's additional training, whether it's the infrastructure program, whether it's moving into the next phase, we were chatting before about the next phase of the irrigation program here, which will unlock further opportunities which the Tasmanian State Government has been supported to do. Whether it's the Marinus Link project, the Battery of the Nation, all of these things are driving economic growth here in Tasmania, and particularly here in the north of Tasmania. And we will continue to support those projects and have, I think, a very excellent relationship with the Tasmanian State Government. Okay, thanks very much, everyone.
Just a quick one on Amanda Stoker.
Okay, so that was live from Hillwood, just north of Launceston in Tasmania. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, continuing the sell of the budget and talking vaccines. So on the vaccine rollout, the situation now is that nearly 3.4 million doses have been administered around the country. So that's around 8.5% of the 40 million doses which will be needed to be administered in Australia to cover everyone over the age of 18. The Prime Minister is saying there that it's likely we'll soon see we'll get to that stage of 500,000 doses being administered in Australia each week. And South Australian health authorities say they'll continue to follow the advice of experts after recording the first case of a rare blood clot linked to the AstraZeneca vaccine. A 53-year-old man was admitted to hospital on Tuesday, where he remains in a critical condition. Reporter Charles Bryce has the details.
There's been 150,000 people here in NEWSABC receive the AstraZeneca vaccine. There's been 2.1 million doses been administered Australia-wide. The chairman of the Immunisation Coalition, Rod Pearce, says the chances of getting a blood clot is only 1 in 100,000, so quite rare. That's also in line with other trends from overseas. Of those 2.1 million doses, there's only been 24 cases linked to the AstraZeneca vaccine. 21 of those cases have since left hospital. There remains 3 people in hospital receiving treatment. But sadly, there has been one fatality, a 48-year-old woman from New South Wales.
An investigation is underway into the death of a baby boy